words from Ben Crump there. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas joins me now. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee and an Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran. Senator, good to have you with us. So, one of the things that crosses my mind when I look at these situations, and in many cases we have video of the people who tear them down, why aren't those people being arrested for destroying public property?
That's a good question, Martha, and it's a question that I'm asking as well. In some cases, as you saw in Washington, D.C., the police were standing by and watching. One can only assume that the left-wing mayors and governors of some of these cities and states have directed the authorities not to intervene.
And it will never stop.
That is almost the very definition of mob violence.
Indeed it is. You quote Abraham Lincoln in a speech that you gave today on the floor of the Senate. And he said, seeing their property destroyed, their families insulted, their lives endangered, their persons injured, and seeing nothing in prospect that forebodes a change for the better, people become tired of and disgusted with a government that offers them no protection. So you've written a letter to Attorney General Barr because you would like to see action on this, right?
I have, Martha. It's unfortunate that so many of the local authorities are not just standing idly by, letting mob rule reign in the streets, but also there's no legal consequences after the fact for the destruction of public or private property. So if the local authorities are not going to protect our citizens, then the federal government has a job to do.
Well, everyone's going to hear you say that, and they're going to say, here he goes again. Now he wants to send the military in because their local folks aren't doing their job. What do you say to that?
No, there are federal laws that could cover some of these circumstances, like the Riot Act or the Veterans Memorial Preservation Act. There are other statutes that may apply to other cases as well. The last thing we can tolerate in this country is mob rule. Abraham Lincoln said in that same speech I cited today that there is no grievance that is the fit object for mob rule. We have to be governed by the rule of law, not the rule of the mob.
I mean, what we're seeing, I think, is unsettling to 99.9% of the country. And, the other tiny slice of that are pulling these statues down. And the crazy thing is that in a lot of cases, they don't even seem to have any clue what these statues represent, because they're tearing down statues that should absolutely be aligned with what they stand for.
That's right, Martha. You mentioned a couple of World War II memorials or George Washington statues. In San Francisco, the mob also destroyed a statue of Ulysses S. Grant. That would be U.S. Grant, General Grant, whose very initials stood for his tenacious and unrelenting approach to war, unconditional surrender. And President Grant, who presided over the passage of the 15th Amendment, guaranteeing all freed slaves the right to vote, major civil rights legislation, who put down race riots in the South, who destroyed the first iteration of the KKK. When you are tearing down statues of Ulysses S. Grant, it's not about the Civil War. It's because you hate America.
Oh, maybe because we haven't taught in history classes, the full story of these individuals. So maybe, the fault lies there to some extent as well. So Senator McConnell has said that, he thinks that we should rename some of these Confederate named bases, that, the Civil War ended and the country was unified, and that it is not necessarily a good idea to stick up for those. And you say?
Well, I certainly opposed the language in committee as it was drafted because it was significantly overbroad, went far beyond bases. I mean, it raises questions about whether we're going to be taking down paintings at West Point or tearing out monuments and memorials to the war dead in Arlington National Cemetery and other military funerals. I also don't like the fact that it simply mandates the outcome at the end of 3 years, as opposed to appointing a commission that can study this question and decide in a deliberate, careful fashion, not in the rush of the moment, what we should do about some of those bases names.
Senator Tom Cotton, thank you very much. Keep us posted on how it turns out with the push to have some pushback and just laws actually upheld when the property of the country is destructed. Thank you very much, Senator. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Martha.